My name is Monk Rowe, and we're in the Jazz Archive at Hamilton College. I'm really pleased to have Sam Kininger here, and we go way back.
Yes, we do. Very pleased to be here,
Yeah.
by the way. Good to see you.
Glad you're back in the area.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you used to come to my house, I have to tell you that all conversation stopped in the house. No one could watch television.
Really?
My family used to say, "He's got a big sound."
Man, loud, right?
It was great.
Well, it's really your fault because, not your fault, but like, you know, I was basically, as you knew before, like a classical musician, like a... You know, like the Glasnow Concerto?
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but then you introduced me to Cannonball Adderley, and that changed my whole world around. It really did.
Well, it changed mine too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there was something about him that's still sort of indescribable,
Yeah,
but it's something to aspire to.
definitely. Still.
Yeah. We'll talk more about that. I'm wondering if you felt like a big fish in a small pond growing up in Oriskany. For those people who are watching this, Oriskany's like a little
Yeah. It's a
adjoining town to Utica.
Yeah. It's not even a town, it's a village.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, in the town itself, yeah, there really wasn't that much going on, you know? I mean, we had the chorus in our band, and a great teacher, I remember Frank Galini. He was, you know, he's the person that really kept me going for a long time, and then he introduced me to you, and also Jack Adams from Holland Patton.
Mm-hmm.
And so simultaneously I had outside, you know, instruction. So, and that allowed me to go on to like, you know, the New York State NISMA competitions.
Right.
And I got involved with, you know, even in chorus, I was singing in the all-state chorus and all-state bands. So I had an opportunity to go a little bit outside of my immediate surroundings in Oriskany. So.
Was your whole childhood in Oriskany?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from birth.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I was born in St. You know, in Utica, but
Yeah.
I lived in Oriskany the whole time. So I graduated high school.
Was there a point, I mean, I'm sure we knew each other at that point, but
Mm-hmm.
did you decide, I'll say, I want to be a full-time musician?
Yes.
When did that happen for you?
That happened, wow, that happened at a young age.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what it would be, or like maybe even what instrument at the time, but I knew it was something that I wanted to do and perform, and it just was one of the few things that felt right. You know, in high school I did it, you know, I was playing sports and like all the other kids and doing, you know, like track and football, and at the same time, you know, studying, you know, Glasnow concertos and sonatas and Haydn sonatas. So my focus definitely broke away from sports. So I was like, I'm not going to be a football player, you know.
Yeah.
So this is something that seemed to be sort of, you know.
Was the sax your first instrument
Yes.
back then? Yeah.
Yeah, and still, it's like my main only instrument, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to say I could play other things, but this is, you know,
Yeah.
number one.
The process of learning and the discipline of playing classical music, did it end up helping you later
Oh
on?
yeah, tremendously with technique.
Mhm.
Just getting around the horn, you know, playing those thousands of arpeggios and scales and over and over and over and over again definitely gives you that muscle memory and dexterity thing on the horn tremendously, and articulation.
So when it came time to go to somewhere else, was Berkeley your first
Yeah.
choice?
I applied to Manhattan and Eastman, but Berkeley was the main one, yeah. And actually, you know, even as for my audition, I played a classical piece
At Berkeley?
to get in. And actually, I don't know if you remember, and I still have it. I have an audition tape that we did at your house.
Oh my.
And I had these requirements for the Manhattan school. Like one was play a jazz tune, and I think, what did we play? That one?
Blue Monk.
Yes, we
Yeah.
played Blue Monk, and and I forget the other one.
Might have played
And then there was like a blues. Well, that was the
Bossa or something
Yes.
like that.
I have the tape still.
Yeah, cool.
And you know that was requirements were there, but somehow I got a scholarship at Berkeley for classical music. So
I didn't even know they did classical music.
yeah, they have a symphonic. They call
Okay.
it symphonic orchestra, and you know which has everything: strings, brass, saxophones, everything. So, but it was definitely a transition because I was checking everything else out too at the same time. I was checking out Cannonball, Coltrane, Parker, and all the other people who I eventually. I guess you could say I'm a late bloomer when it comes to like jazz. Like jazz, I didn't really focus on it until later on, like maybe senior year in high school into college, where a lot of the kids I met grew up with it. They're like, you know, they already had it. So
Yeah, they might have come from one of those high schools that had a
yes,
amazing
like performing
program and
arts.
a lot more bodies.
It's
You know,
true
to,
too.
you
Yeah.
know. Do you call yourself? Let's say you meet somebody that you don't know, and they say, "What do you do?"
Yeah.
What's your answer?
Musician.
Do you don't call yourself? I'm a jazz musician.
I just call myself a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a musician, and then, you know, the other questions will come. Well, what kind of, what do you play?
Right.
And that's still I have a hard time to describe, but yeah, it's definitely. I think my influences, it all kind of comes together in different ways. You know.
Was I don't know if I could call it a decision, but you sort of entered this subfield of funk, you know, instrumental funk.
Yeah.
Was that, what made you go in that direction, as opposed to, I don't know, becoming like more of a bebop player?
Well, we kind of touched on it earlier before we started. I'm more of a percussive type rhythmic player, I guess you could say. So I gravitated to people like Maceo Parker and things like that, and I was like, this feels like, you know, right. And at the same time, I could throw in what little, you know, the jazz stuff that I did have, and incorporate it into the soloing process of, you know, jazz is definitely a more complicated situation, where in the jam band world or type thing, it's maybe, you know, modal or like one chord thing, but you can expand on one thing. Does that answer your question?
It does, and it makes me think of, well, one of my questions I wanted to ask you. The term jam band, I think I probably heard that the first times I heard it, they were referring to the band Fish.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, Grateful Dead too, but
yeah.
it became more of an accepted term, a jam band.
Yeah.
But what does it really mean?
I guess it means there's a lot of jamming going on. You know, maybe from a jazz perspective, you know, you have a melody, and then maybe that circles around a few times, and then everybody sort of jams, I guess.
Right.
I don't know how else to put it, really, because really that's what it is. But I guess, you know, I'd like to, like I have my own band, my own situation, and I would like to, maybe it's not really a jam band, but it's not jazz either. It's sort of in between.
Okay.
But we try and keep it less jammy for hours, you know, and keep it just more grounded, you know, in a way. I guess it's like, you know, funk music. So.
Okay. Is it safe to say that most jam bands don't play as many chords
No, definitely.
as
yeah. Yes.
and they also don't play swing grooves as often,
No.
if at all?
No. I mean, I've been to a million festivals throughout the years now,
Yeah.
and kind of has the same vibe to it, a lot of it. I'm not trying to do it, you know. But yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot of one chord situations.
But that, in effect, I think is has its own bit of difficulty to
Yes, it does.
What the heck do you do for
exactly.
12 minutes
Right.
on A
And
minor?
that's what I was about to say. It allows you to become a little bit more creative in your mind, and as far as soloing, you can't do the same things over and over again. And you also learn how to build a solo, as opposed to like just randomly playing stuff where I was like, you can start it somewhere, take the solo to a different place, and bring it down a little bit, and kind of, you know, sort of fill it out, and then of course, bring it up there, and then everybody in the band goes up to that point, and then So there's that aspect of it that's not easy to do either. You have to have a good chemistry with the people you're playing with, as well as chemistry from the crowd as well. It's a lot involved with that, like live situation.
Good point.
Yeah.
It's a neat feeling, I think, to sort of be in control of that.
Exactly.
If your band is
you got the people with you.
Yeah.
They got to be right there with you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't work. You're like, and then out there, and you're kind of like, okay.
Or the opposite.
Or the
You know, if you want to start your solo down, and they're
Exactly.
like, wait, it's like, hey.
Yeah. Many times. If you ever go to my shows, I'm always my drummer Nikki. She's my favorite drummer, but I'm always like.
I think I saw you at the Electric Company
yeah.
with her.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a drummer for Beyonce.
Yeah.
Knowles.
She likes to whack that snare drum.
Oh, yeah. Yes, she does, and every other drum and cymbal. So, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, this is definitely, I guess, dynamics issue, as well as, being able to communicate. I guess that would be the same for every situation, band-wise, but I don't know.
I was looking at one of the YouTube clips of you last night, and it was with Soul Live, I think, and I think the tune was Right On.
Right On.
Okay,
Yeah.
so down below, there's all these comments people make, and the guy, someone wrote, "What is Sam playing at 4:07?"
At 4:07?
At 4:07, the guy had timed the thing, and I said, well, I'm going to listen to this, and sure enough, when it got to 4:07, you played some thing that was out of the chord, so to speak. We
okay.
say outside.
Right.
So,
yeah, I do that a lot, actually, yeah.
is it, how do I ask this? Do you have things in your head that you know you can go to?
Sort of, yeah. Well, I guess it's like finding your way home, I guess is the best way I can explain it. Like if you're in one chord, like F, say for example, a lot of people, you can go a half step above F, half step below F while you're soloing, just resolve it. So maybe that's what he's hearing, and it sounds different when you're in the jam situation. You know what I mean? Because it's not like a jazz percussion where I'm playing over that change. In my mind, I'm playing kind of over a different change and kind of creating other chords, but then it all comes back to one. If that makes sense.
Sure. Does it? Because theoretically, those could be called wrong notes.
Right. Yeah.
So how do you make them right?
You're only half step away, right, from the right note. Someone said that to me once. The right note's only a half step away.
Okay.
But I play a lot of chromatically. I play a lot of chromatics. And obviously rhythmic things, and then it's just fun. It's fun to go outside of that, of just playing, and it a lot, definitely stimulates your mind, and it forces you to think while you're playing too, and to go to how do I get back to this place, I don't know how I could give you
No, that's very well said. Because you probably would never end your solo with
with the out one.
being a half step away from where you should be.
You gotta get back to F.
Well.
So, I do a lot of that though. I guess I don't know what the word is for it, but yeah, playing outside.
Playing outside, coming back.
You ever check out Kenny Garrett? He does, that's a lot of his phrasing is like that, so I'm definitely influenced by his style of playing.
So after you got out of Berkeley, how did you sort of get into the music scene, or what was the first step in trying to make a living at it?
I was sort of in it already while I was at Berkeley. Around '94, I started playing with, there was a big band, well there's many things, but there was a jazz big band at Berkeley, and it was called the Kendrick Oliver New Life Jazz Orchestra.
Kendrick Oliver?
Kendrick Oliver, and they're still around, check them out. Kendrick Oliver New Life Jazz Orchestra. we started there. I was one of the original guys, and you know, our first thing was like, let's play Count Basie charts, and let's play Duke Ellington charts, just to, you know, get the tradition in. And then, you know, we had started, faculty started writing charts for us, and then we started playing outside of the school. We started going to libraries and things around Boston. So that was sort of my, kind of like, I started gigging in Boston with that big band. And what else? I played in, I guess this band called Fatbag, and we were more of like an R&B funk band that played around Boston too. So, and then we started going to New York City and venturing out, and then the people that were in that band I still play with today, like in Soul Live and Lettuce, like Eric Krasno. And so we've known each other for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
So I've kind of had the same core of people that I've been playing with. You know, then I had my own band, which is a little bit outside, and I met up with them years later. But
Are your members spread out geographically?
Not too far. It's mostly Northeast, New York City, Boston.
Okay.
Our bass player is in California.
That's pretty spread out.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
I mean, if I was trying to line up a gig, you know.
Yeah, I know. So.
Yeah, I want to talk about that more, like what it's like to try to lead a band. But so I guess it's sort of like the typical musician story. You need to get exposed. You need to meet people.
Definitely network, and you know, ultimately find people you come to play with. And then the same thing all throughout that. I was playing several other type of gigs, like wedding gigs, and you know, working like this place in Wally's in Boston. It was like a weekly gig for me, Wally's Cafe, and that was sort of the school outside of the school. That's where everyone kind of got, you know, you hear the stories about the jazz clubs where, you know, Charlie Parker got a cymbal thrown at him. That's that type of place where you kind of honed your chops, and if you couldn't play, the band would stop. Like I would go in and try and play Night in Tunisia or some type of, and I thought I could play over it, but then all of a sudden, one by one, if you couldn't hack it, that's how you get your chops, I guess.
Because the rhythm section was older players?
They were older players, familiar with every standard in the real book, and been playing them for a million times. So here I come, young Sam, you know, thinking I could, you know, it just it happened to everybody too. And then, you know, you have to be able to cut it, basically. So that was Wally's experience, you know. It's like real life experience, like a punch in the face, you know. And then you're like, okay, I better go practice. I better go play these things. Better set foot in there again.
Nice.
So, and then, you know, I just kept on, you know, playing in the Boston scene a lot.
Yeah. If you were going to tell a student in relation to that experience, you better know the tune.
Yeah.
What do you need to know about the tune?
You need to know the form. Especially that, because a lot of people in the beginning would forget AABA. You think it's the simplest thing in the world. But you go back to A after the first B, done. Make sure you know the form. Play over it, solo over it as many times as you can. Listen to it over and over and over again. And hear where it's supposed to go. Don't go back to the top before you're supposed to. Basically. Yeah, it's like, you'd think, you know, it'd be easy, but in the heat of the moment when you're like, you know, maybe stressed and like worried and things like that, you forget and then oops.
Yeah. It's interesting on some of those songs like So What or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's AABA, except it can get, because the chords are so simple.
Yeah.
You can mess it up.
Yeah, exactly. Like So What or Impressions are the same thing. Yeah.
Right. So, you got this, you know, you've been in and out of Soul Live, and now the band Lettuce is part of Soul Live.
Of them, yeah.
They share members, sort of.
Yeah, like Eric Krasno, the guitar player, is in both.
Okay.
Neil Evans, who's the keyboardist in Soul Live, is now a member of Lettuce. The only person that isn't there is Alan, the drummer. So it's myself, Eric Krasno, Neil Evans, and then the other members, who are the other guitar player, Adam Smirnoff, and the bass player from California, his name's Eric Coombs.
So who who books these bands? You have an agency?
Yeah, it's called. It used to be called Velour Records out of New York, but now it's called the Royal Family Productions.
I did see that.
And that incorporates a lot of our family that I was telling you about that we've had for like 20 years. We have my band, we have Soul Live, Eric. Everyone has their kind of like solo projects along in there involved. And then we're all going to be coming together soon to record a new Lettuce record soon. So
Nice.
yeah. So
Is it hard? Is it a hard life?
yeah, it is. I mean, you're not going to make $1 million. You know, it's you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's like an oxymoron.
But, yeah.
Rich jazz musician.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I think people don't realize that.
Yeah.
They probably see you up on stage
I
and
know,
think, man.
like all these people, and you
Yeah.
think it's you know, but yeah, a lot of it throughout the years was, you know, packed in a van, you know, with the whole band, and then, you know, carrying stuff in and out. People don't see all the, you know, sharing hotel rooms, some people on the floor, sleeping bags, and just scraping by just to make even, you know, and then if there was any left, we were lucky we got paid most of the time. So. But it's one of those, you know, you can stick it out, or, you know, try something else, I guess. Yeah.
The people that don't stick it out and try something else,
Mhm.
do you think that they have more options? Like, well, I was good at
Mhm.
accounting, or I could be an
Mhm.
accountant as well as a musician, so I don't know if I really asked that question right, but
like having more options is definitely a better thing. I would say even as a musician, going to school for maybe not performance, but add something to it like production engineering, so that you have another outlet. You know what I mean, as far as being in the scene, but you know, so you don't have to be an accountant. You know what I mean, or something else. You know.
yeah, I do know what you mean. And do you think that Berkeley, or whatever post-high school education you had,
Mm-hmm.
you had the talent first, right? They can't teach you the talent.
You know what? Yeah, not really. Yeah.
Did they help you though? I mean, how much?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had private instruction there as well. This guy, his name's Bill Pierce, and who played with, you know, I'm sure you've heard of Bill.
Yeah, I know Javon Jackson mentioned.
Oh yeah,
him.
yeah, it's Ron
Yeah.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's insane.
Yeah.
He can, and he can play every, you know, just as well, right? Wasn't he here?
He was here.
Yeah. But I had definitely good private instruction there, and Andy McGee was another one at Berkeley who, he was one of those old school, kick you in the tail type teachers too, where if you weren't prepared, he'd tell you to leave, you know, and be like, come back when you got that chapter done, you know. But yeah, I got a lot of instruction from other students as well, like those ones I was telling, like my friends who, you know, maybe came from those arts high schools, and they introduced me to a lot of music I'd never heard before. So there was a lot of hanging out, I guess, but like listening to a million John Coltrane albums just to get it, just to know them, you know. And then we had ensemble rooms where everyone jam sessions, but like, you know, jazz style. But yeah, we would sit for hours and hours and hours in this room, probably ensemble room like this, one of those soundproof rooms, and just everyone would go along and around in a circle. And that was fun. We'd be like Friday nights, like everyone else was going to the bars, we'd be like, let's have a jam session. You know, and we'd go into Berkeley and find one of the B rooms and just sit around until 5 o'clock in the morning. So
Wow.
Learned a lot just from my friends. So that atmosphere was good.
I want to take you back to the thing you said about packed into a van and sleeping on the floor. I mean, that sounds like in my rock and roll days, you know. It's like some things never change, right?
That's how the band Lettuce started too.
Really?
It's like the word lettuce was like, let us use your house, or like let us use your food, let us use your instruments, because like we were, you know, like let us sleep on your floor. So that's where lettuce came from. Really, yeah, because we play these crazy gigs, yeah, and then afterwards, like, where's every, you think, where's the hotel at, but no, we'd be like, okay, I'll get that corner over there. That was, it happens years ago. I guess you call it the struggle. But.
Now when you go to play a gig, like you said you went to New Orleans,
yeah.
I assume that
you this
got some kind of room.
Beds, yeah. There's a bed. There's always a bed now, which is a good thing. Yeah. It's always a plus.
Yeah.
But even with my band, when we first started getting around, like there was 4 of us, and my manager, we would all share one room,
Wow.
We'd, 2 people in a bed and the manager on the floor.
Yeah.
So, but, after a while you get tired of that, definitely.
Sure.
When you're younger, and you're like, it's fun, just to be able to play out and stuff. But.
There's sort of the adventure factor.
Exactly, yeah.
This is a good exposure gig for you.
Yes. Oh, how many times have you?
Really?
Yeah.
I have to laugh because Carmen Carmonica around here said, you can't eat exposure.
No. No. Yeah, I know. You can't eat exposure.
Gee.
So.
What about things have changed very quickly now for how you record, how your records get out there, how you promote yourself.
Yeah.
Is it the internet and YouTube and iTunes? Do you think that's been mostly a good thing?
I think so.
Yeah.
For musicians like myself,
Mm-hmm.
I think it has been too. Like, even, 15 years ago, or 10, when we first started recording, like the Solive albums, it had to be in the big studio, like in Arista, New York, or whatever. It had to be in this huge studio with a big console and everything. You don't need any of that now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need it, but like we recorded an album in Alan's basement, and he's good at what he does. Though he's got good equipment.
Mm-hmm.
He uses Pro Tools.
Yeah.
But he that part of it is definitely it saves a lot of money too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about a record label? Do you guys do your own?
That's our own record label now.
Yeah.
We don't. It's not like a Sony record deal or
Mm-hmm.
which we had. We had the Blue Note recording deal, which was cool, but getting it self-produced has definitely been more advantageous to us, and like the iTunes situation has definitely been. We've sold a lot of records with Lettuce, especially.
Cool.
So.
But if I went to Barnes and Noble
Right.
in Syracuse, I probably wouldn't find Lettuce records.
You
Or
might.
would I?
Yeah, you'd find Solive ones,
Mhm.
but not as probably not as prevalent now. Like people don't even go out that much and buy CDs anymore either,
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
records, but some people do.
Download individual tunes
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned you'd been to Japan
Yes.
to play. What's that like?
It's amazing. Yeah, it's that's when you feel like sort of a rock star in the I guess jam band world. Over there, they appreciate it so much differently. Like here, like over here, it's appreciated, but like I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, we're like superstars over there as far as like the appreciation of the music. They understand what's all going on. Where in some cases over here, people are just kind of listening. It's always quiet. Like we played like I told you, at the Blue Notes in Tokyo, and in this sort of a jazz club setting, but during the song, it's dead silence by the crowd. They're focused in and watching everything that goes on. And at the end, an uproar of huge, whatever, clapping and stuff, and then back down, and they're waiting. They're just waiting for the next day. It's intense.
Wow.
Yeah, you can hear a pin drop.
It must have been a little disconcerting at first.
It was at first.
Yeah.
But then you realize they're like really into it. They're really into the music, and it's definitely a different experience at first. I was like, whoa, another level of appreciation, I guess you could say.
Would you or any of you guys in your circle ever consider moving there?
I have.
Yeah.
I have, yeah. I have friends that are over there that I went to Berkeley with. They have done that, and still make a good living too. Like they, what's a good example? My friend Anthony Wanzi, who's a jazz pianist, he played with Kenny Garrett, and he still does the jazz circuit, like does all the clubs and stuff. But he lives in Tokyo, and while he's there, he has this. It's kind of funny, like this kind of like hotel sort of situation, you know. But he does that, and he plays jazz gig, and he teaches there, and so. And I have a few other friends. Plus, not to mention, just my friends who are Japanese. You know, they were at Berkeley and then moved back. And, so. Yeah.
Wow. Well, did you ever see those old downbeats? They probably still do. They do blindfold test.
Oh no.
It's like you're sitting listening, and the guy plays a record for you. You have to tell him what it is.
Oh no, but I could.
Okay. Well,
you gonna do it?
I'm gonna do it.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. But you know what? This is.
Oh yeah. Yes. Oh. I have the same reaction as when I heard that the first time.
Yeah.
Roy McCurdy, right?
Yeah.
And who was it? Sam Jones someday?
I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Woo.
And that, and like.
Yeah.
Can't wait. I mean, that's like one of the greatest moments you could ever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was an easy one.
Yeah. That's the only one I picked
Oh,
up.
you did?
Because I wouldn't do
Nice.
that good on him. I think unless you. So I know what I know.
Yeah.
But I
know that. Yeah. What song was it?
That was the Sticks, I think.
Sticks.
The Sticks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. If you if you had students, like, what would you tell them to listen to?
Cannibalizing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, depending on what style they're trying to get into. If they're trying to play, you know, they want to get some groove stuff and funk. Obviously, Maceo Parker. That'd be one. And listen to like Herbie Hancock records for like funk. I can't remember. I'm spacing out the name. Saxophone player for Herbie.
Recent?
No, from like the Headhunters.
Oh yeah, I know who you mean. I won't be able to think of it either.
But,
Benny Maupin?
Yes, Benny Maupin.
Yeah.
Eddie Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Some good like groove kind of stuff. John Coltrane, not for that, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I'd say Maceo. Listen to Kenny Garrett. If you're a saxophone player, listen to Kenny Garrett. What else? Yeah.
Do you have a fairly extensive CD collection? Or
Yeah, they're all on my iPod right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I have like somewhere like 9,000 songs in my iPod, varying from Jimi Hendrix to Michael Jackson to Cannonball to Mozart to everything.
Right.
So it's an all-round situation.
So does Sam Kininger practice?
Yeah, not as much as Sam Kininger should. He practices a lot on the gigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I should definitely do a little bit more. But
I would think that
warming up.
Yeah, and most of the stuff you do, it's just as important that you just have your endurance.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because I know that as I have become more of a piano player, that my embouchure like wears out in a hurry.
Oh, it does.
It's
it
like
does.
that.
No, it still does too. Especially, yeah, that definitely happens. Where like halfway through the gig, if I hadn't, even for like a week or something like that, then I'll put a new read on, that's hard especially, and then by the middle of the gig I'm like, oh no, taking shorter solos.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you take this one. But yeah, you have to stay on it in order to
What would you, if you went home this afternoon and did a practice session, what would you practice?
Long tones, because intonation's huge, you know, like, I would try and practice, intonation, yeah. That's because I have a problem with the upper register, I always have, of being sharp. So, that's what I would do. I would just practice tone. I wouldn't get all crazy. I would just practice long tones, you know. Simple. Just to make sure, like, it's the tone that you want also, too. And, you know. And then the range of the horn, obviously, go from top to bottom.
Yeah, if a sax player watched this later on, they might want to know, what's he playing? What's he playing? No, you told me this horn was handed to you.
Oh yeah. It's it's a bronze Yanagisawa. The guy from the factory. I was in the store listening or playing different horns, and I just happened to like this one. And you remember? I don't know if you remember the old Yanagisawa I had. I played the Yanagisawa all throughout high school. So I've always loved the horn. I played Yamahas and Selmers, and I've just always liked the feel of the horn. It's like a heavy horn. It's got a good tone to it, buzz to it. But yeah, Yanagisawa. And I always like the fact this is maybe the cannonball. It's based off of the Kings, the old Kings that Cannonball used to play. So it has that look to it also. It has something to it.
There's something to be said for
there is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It has a good buzz to it, like most horns don't have. For like, I don't know, I just like the tone of them.
What about your mouthpiece?
Mouthpiece is a Meyer, the old New York Meyer, hard rubber. Actually, that's a complete lie. The one that I have on right now is not. I've been testing out, have you ever heard of Jody Jazz?
Yeah.
I have a friend who works for them, and he sent me a bunch of mouthpieces to check out. So I'm kind of checking out Jody Jazz mouthpieces. But for 20 years or so, I played the Meyer. And that's what Cannonball played also as well. Right? Didn't you play a Meyer?
You know,
I'm
not sure.
An old New York Meyer, because they make them out of hard rubber then.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm kind of checking out new mouthpieces.
Yeah.
It's Jody Jazz, but...
But you were never one of those people who, in my memory, that you agonized over your equipment.
Yeah, I kind of stayed with the same thing
for
forever, really. And I mean, I've stayed with Rovner ligatures. This is kind of a newer model that they come out with. Reeds, I changed. Reeds are like a different reed every box.
Yeah.
I still have a hard time finding the right one. For instance, these are Van Doren Java 2.5s, but I've even tried using tenor reeds.
Oh.
Jeff Coffin, who's the saxophone player for Dave Matthews right now.
Yeah.
I had asked him, because I went to a show one time, I was like, what are you playing on for your alto? He goes, 3.5 Java tenor reeds. I'm like, what? So I started doing that, and I got used to it for a while, but I've gravitated more to alto reeds. So the one thing I would change the most is reeds, I would say.
You've played with Dave Matthews. Was that fun?
Great. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And I was good friends. Well, our relationship with them started with Soul Live. We went on tour, opening up for them. Like we did this Southern tour, and then I became friends with Leroy, the saxophone player who passed away.
Yeah.
And so we kind of just had a relationship with. Whenever they would come through, I would like sit in. And also now Jeff Coffin's in the band who I've been friends with. So if they're ever around, like in Albany or SPAC or whatever, I go check them out. So it's usually the same tune. It's that, wow, what'd you say? That one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so they're always happy for that one.
Is there music, it seemed like the parts, the horn part and the violin part were fairly arranged.
Yeah.
I mean, they had worked it out beforehand.
Yeah. And a lot of it's pretty, I wouldn't say simple, but it's, it's definitely a good arrangement. That sound, which is strange too, the sound of the violin with the saxophones too, kind of gives Dave Matthews that unique sound of his band.
Yeah.
So.
I bet you have to pay attention to stay in tune with the violin player.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, they all have those really nice in-ear monitors
Mm-hmm.
that are all set up so you don't have to really work. Like you can hear Dave Matthews talk like from the other side of the stage. That's how sensitive they are. Everyone's pretty much can tell if they're in tune and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
No.
so
Huh.
it's cool.
I mentioned before we started, we were talking about the playing into microphones,
Mhm.
and clip-on microphones
Yeah.
and all that. How do you feel about that?
I don't like clip-on microphones too much. They just don't allow you to I don't know, be as expressive. Because like if you have a mic, you can pull back from it and kind of control your volume. And where, you know, if you clipped on, you could do that, but it's much more, you know, you have to be
Yeah.
up here or turn up your stuff up and down
Right.
on the
Right.
thing. But I don't know. That's why I have all these scratches here because I'm always like and I get yelled at a lot by it too because I'm always like, Sam, get off the microphone, because it'll be too loud and the sound guys turn me down and then I can't hear myself, so I go even farther into the microphone, then it feeds back but yeah, that's the battle wounds on my saxophone. So. Microphone scars.
You ever get into verbal arguments with sound people?
Oh yeah, they get mad. They definitely. After a while now, you like don't piss off the sound guy, you know, or the monitor guy especially, if there is one, you know, because he could make or break your sound easily.
Especially if they're a warm-up act.
Yeah.
I know that
yeah.
used to happen to us, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why should they make you sound good?
I know.
And it's
I'm
not
always like
it's
this.
not like you have enough money to throw them a few bucks
I know.
either, you know.
I know, I give him a hard time. After a while, you're like, it doesn't work either. So.
Has traveling got somewhat better for you? I mean, you have to fly to most of your gigs, don't you?
Yeah, I usually fly right here out of Syracuse to get a connecting flight in Philly usually, and it's either out to California, New Orleans.
You able to take your horn on the plane?
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah, I travel light too. Like it's just this and a duffel bag usually.
Yeah.
I like a backpack.
Mm.
Where you know some of the guys like have big huge suitcases and it just takes up too much space.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing you stuck with the alto.
Yeah,
Getting a horn that you'd have an issue with.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Did you ever mess with the soprano or be tempted to?
A little bit, and tenor too. I just, I really want to get a tenor soon. But I did like both, and I really, you know, what's funny? Whenever I pick up a tenor, I immediately want to play jazz. I start playing, but when I'm on the alto, I'm like, fun.
Yeah.
So the two instruments, it's like two different instruments actually. So.
Did you notice when you started transitioning into the funk world, especially with guitar player based bands, that you had to play in funkier keys?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Of course, Soul Live is not a guitar, well...
They are, but it's more of, I mean, they started out as like an organ trio type situation.
Yeah.
Like, you listen to like the old Wes Montgomery type things, like the George Benson style of things, or who else, Lou Donaldson type. It was definitely an organ trio, you know, so. Where I'd say Lettuce is like equally guitar and horn, where the emphasis on the guitar and the horns. So.
What do you... Are you a goal-oriented person?
Sure, yeah.
What are your goals right now?
Immediate goals is to record my own next album, which I'm in the process of doing with my band. It was Amy Bowles, Aaron Bellamy, the band you saw in Utica, basically. I think they were all there.
Yeah, I think so.
My original band. We're planning on recording a new album. And then hopefully, I've never taken my band to Japan yet, so that's a goal soon. So.
After that, sort of, you know,
Yeah.
you deal with what happens to you.
Exactly, yeah.
You think you have a, I know your wife works in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
You thinking about having a family or anything like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a family already.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's I definitely switched gears, I guess you can say, over the past few years, where I still go out, but it's not like the grind where I'm like playing every weekend and every other night of the week, where I was that way for years. So, yeah, I kind of like focused on well, my family, and then you know, I would say the gigs that are more beneficial for me to take.
Yes, I mean, do you have a set figure in mind? Someone calls you and said, "Okay, come down to New Orleans and we'll be here for 3 days," and they say, "And here's what we can pay you."
Right.
Do you have a set figure
Yeah.
that you say, "Forget it," you know?
Yeah, I do. And that
good.
varies. That could vary.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I don't go for less than a certain amount. I guess that's what you're saying.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's good to have that sort of in place that you
Yeah.
don't have to think too hard about it on
Yeah.
the phone, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
We're like, that sounds all right. Let me think about it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Rewinding way back, I remember your mother being very supportive of you.
Oh yeah.
You know, she
Yes,
seemed to really
Oh yeah.
be on your
Yeah.
behind you. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not in that, like, as far as practicing and stuff like that, but we went to shows and like we saw Ray Charles and a lot of the shows that came to Utica. She bought me the records, like the Lester Young records and John Coltrane records, which I didn't check out at first. You know, I put it on and be like, oh, that's all right. But then later on, I would be like listening to them intently for hours and hours. So she definitely, was a big influence in my musical world.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Who is your, I don't know if this would be specific names, who's your competition these days in the funk world?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, well, is there a lot of competition for the kind of work that you get?
Not really.
Okay.
And it's not like, I'm just saying like this, as far as like my band is considered, it's more of a progressive sounding situation. Like you've heard it, like it's just like kind of a lot of fast paced and high energy situations. Not that there isn't anywhere else, I'm just saying we seem to like stick out a little more than the other bands. Not in a better or worse way, but like it's kind of unique, I guess. But there's plenty of instrumental bands, funk bands and organ bands. So.
Does your music get much radio play that you're aware of?
A lot of college radio, but yeah, like sometimes I'll hear So Live on NPR. I've been listening to it, but I know the college radio stations pump it a lot. Not so much on like regular.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a hard question. Nobody's ever really been prepared to answer it, but what's the worst gig you ever played?
Oh, I can tell you.
Can you?
Yes. And actually, you didn't even play it. That's how bad it was.
Okay.
And there's this place. I'm trying to think if there was a worse one. But there's this place in Massachusetts, and I can't even remember the town, but the place was called Club Ice. And this is when I was in the band Fatbag, and we walked in, with all our stuff to load onto the stage, and the owner of the place came up to us and was like, "What kind of music do you guys play?" And we're like, R&B, hip hop, funk, and stuff like that. And he goes, "That ain't gonna fly here." And so we picked up our stuff and left. But
really?
And we got nothing. It was one of those situations where we were about to play. It was. I guess it's not a. That was like a scary situation, I guess. That our manager booked us at that place. So, what else? I guess that's the first one. As soon as you asked that, it popped in my head. But, and actually, we didn't even play the gig. But.
No. Could have been worse if you did.
Could have been worse, yeah. They would have called the, all their friends down, whatever, but.
Yeah.
The worst. I don't know. It is a hard one, man.
Yeah. We tend to not want to think about those things.
Yeah.
How about the best thing you've ever done? I mean, is it possible to highlight a few?
Well, you mean just recently? One of the greatest, yeah, actually. We did the Jam Cruise, which was last year, and I got to play with Maceo Parker, Fred Wesley, and Pee Wee Ellis on stage right next to me. If you go, there's pictures on Facebook and stuff, but what an honor that was. Those are like, to be side by side with Pee Wee and, like I said, Maceo and Fred Wesley was crazy. And we just got to do that again in New Orleans as well.
Gee.
Pee Wee Ellis, what a great guy he is, and he taught us a lot too. Like me and Ryan Zoidis got to hang out with him a lot, and Pee Wee taught us like arrangements for some of these James Brown tunes that we did that he wrote himself.
Oh, God.
Like an I Feel Good and stuff that he actually wrote. But playing that gig was like, wow, definitely one of the highlights.
It's hard to put into words the way those guys play those horn parts.
Yeah.
There's something about it that's just so cool.
Yeah, Maceo alone, jeez. When you see him, you've seen him live. That's like when you just played the Cannonball, like it goes right to your bone, like to your, like it just goes right in there. How to explain it, but just to be around, yeah, that was quite an experience. Yeah. So.
If you could, well, you had the experience. I was thinking if you could go back in time and see or hear somebody, where would you go?
John Coltrane. Where would I go?
I mean, who would you go to see?
Well, yeah, I would love to have seen Cannonball live.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those live shows, you just wish you were there, you know? Like you hear like the crowd and clap, like, God, I wish I was there watching that.
Yeah.
Even Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, you'd like to have been a part of that crowd. Yeah, I would say.
Okay. What period of John Coltrane do you especially like?
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah. I mean, I like his early bebop stages, and that's the part about I like him the most. He transitioned through so many different phases. I know a lot of people, like in the end, he kind of went to outer space, and it's kind of how he went out, He's like played through every phase of the music till he kind of just took off. But I mean, I was just yesterday I was listening to Train and Bags, like Milt Hitton, and the Vibe record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. The way he can play over a blues, and it's a lot of notes. Some people say he's like too notey or whatever, but if you can really catch that, he's really every note's right. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So, and I do like some of the really odd stuff too. I have to say, like the album Transitions is one of my favorites, and Meditations is another one. But there's a lot to listen to when it comes to him.
And who would you spend money on these days? Who's playing now?
Who's playing now? Wow, see, I haven't. That's a hard one. Yeah.
It'd be hard for me too.
Yeah, really.
But you mentioned Kenny Garrett.
Yes. Yeah, if he came to town, I would go see him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. A fan. So.
Well, wouldn't it be interesting to be able to take the funk feel that you usually work in it and try to combine it with more complex chord changes or something like that?
Yeah, and I try to do that when I write too as well, like for my stuff, and not make it just a one chord thing,
Yeah.
where there's a bridge and then there's a C section at the end, and then go back to something else. Make them a little bit more interesting, I guess, for the listener and for the musician. Well,
how do you write?
A lot of it is us together in a group situation, where I'll have an idea for the melody, and it's definitely a group. The past two situations have been, like, I don't really come in with charts,
Okay.
per se, but I'll have an idea of a tune and the way it's supposed to go. And this is another important thing about the whole situation, is having people who get it, like having people who understand what you're talking about, because sometimes it could be a different language. To some people, they're like, no, what do you mean? And you're like, So it's good that you have a good chemistry with people that you play with over the years to sort of get what you're saying, without, you don't have to bring, be all super technical about it. But
Are most of the people in your band,
Mhm.
are they, I hate to use the word, but are they college trained musicians
Some.
at school? Or?
Actually one.
Hmm.
Amy, the keyboard player, she went to classical school in North Carolina. And,
Okay.
both Aaron and Nikki both went to Berkeley, but Aaron's self-taught as a bass player. And Nikki grew up like in the churches, so
Yeah.
she was like, I'd say myself and Amy, the only really classically trained in the band.
Yeah.
So.
They probably all, it's probably hard to get everybody's schedule
Yeah.
coordinated and say,
Yeah.
okay, when are you free?
Especially now, everybody's doing something all the time.
Yeah. That's pretty much the life of a musician.
Working
You
all the
gotta
time.
take, you gotta.
Different,
Yeah.
all the different situations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Would there be opportunities in this area for you to play?
I have kind of a crew, I was going to say, a network of people in Syracuse and in Albany,
Yeah.
but I usually have to drag my Boston band, back to the area, but
Yeah.
if there are opportunities, definitely I would,
Mhm. Right.
So.
Any kind of music that you don't like? How would you know? You don't listen to it, right?
Yeah. I can say I don't listen to a lot of country.
Yeah.
I don't say I don't like it, but I mean, like I said, I have a really broad range of styles, but I don't listen to a lot of country. I can say that.
How about rap music? Do you listen
Oh, I
to
love
rap?
it. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely a big influence also.
Because you're so rhythmic oriented.
Yeah, yeah. And also, the two things I think of when I play too are drums and rappers, actually. Like the way they flow, when they, the articulation of it.
Drums and
And like hip hop, like
oh,
rapper,
okay.
like
Oh, rappers, yeah.
MCs, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. Definitely rhythmic phrasing is what I definitely emphasize a lot on, more so than melodic, I guess. So,
Well, I've noticed that some of the melodies I've heard you play are like staccato with a capital S.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's like, bah, bah,
yeah.
bah, they're very.
Yeah, short.
Yeah.
That's me and Ryan joke about that too, because like you don't really have to be into it because we like play it so fast you can't tell if it's into it. And like, I'm not many reasons I'll drive it. It's like you have to slow it down and really hear was that in tune? But yeah, a lot of it is very percussive, staccato situations.
Yeah.
And fast.
you ever growl into your horn? Those kinds of
Sometimes.
things, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times when I'm way up in the high register,
Uh-huh.
I like put my voice into it. It seems to just naturally happen too.
Yeah,
It's like
right.
you're just playing so hard, all of a sudden you're like into the horn. So
And as a matter of fact, going back to that clip I was watching you on,
Yeah.
that tune, at one point you were popping out these,
Mhm.
whoop, I mean like way high.
Oh yeah, like
I mean, do you have people say, well, how do you play high like that? Is
Like
it
a
you doing overtones, or you just have special fingerings that you know sort of work?
Fingerings.
Yeah.
Like high G. That's not gonna work right now. Sorry. You might want to edit this part.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the regular fingerings usually is what I do.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I'll do a lot of kind of, I guess, random stuff where it's kind of like in between notes and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not as much as like the overtone thing, like you're talking about. It's yeah, mostly fingerings.
Right. That was more of a classical thing to learn all the
Yeah.
Sigurd Rascher.
Yes, Sigurd Rascher, yeah. Yeah, I have it too, instead of the book, the yellow book.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, someday I'm gonna hear a clip of you playing with Soul Live or your own band, whatever, and I'm expecting to hear a quote from the Glazunov Concerto.
Yes, okay, no problem.
So see if you can work that.
I will. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Yeah. Are you a mode thinker? Or
somewhat, yeah.
sometimes?
I would say modal player, yeah.
Yeah.
Not so much the exact like thinking, but I guess that coincides with what we were talking about before, like playing outside of the key, sort of, but like in it. If that makes sense. That's a good example. Yeah. Yes, I guess.
Okay.
That would be. I would think like that.
Yeah. Sometimes the scale, jazz scales that I see, I feel like, boy, I'm out of date. I don't know what some of these things are.
Yeah, me either. Yeah. Not as much. But I do a lot of listening. That's what I do. And transcribing is also a good thing. I used to just sit and try and learn solos. Learn people's solos. I'm sure that's still a pretty good means of learning your instrument, and learning different styles and people's styles.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if you had any advice for guys who might be in college and those people who want to be where you are, what would you say to them? Say, don't be taking my gigs.
Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And wow, get out as much as possible. Get out of the practice room. Get out and play. Get over the hump of whatever. If you have stage fright or whatever, just try and find those situations and jump in. Like a lot of these they call jam bands and jam festivals. Go to festivals because a lot of it's open for people to sit in as well. A lot of these bands will be like, they'll see someone with a saxophone and be like, come on. And you pretty much, you have opportunities to get out there and kind of explore and experiment with that scene, That'd be my best advice, is just get out there and jump into it.
Yeah.
So I did. So.
And living, I guess I asked this, but living in Rome, New York now, doesn't make that much different for the kinds of gigs you play, because you have to travel anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get in the car to go to New York or Boston. It's like a 4-hour trip or whatever.
Yeah.
It hasn't really changed, as far as where I need to get to. So.
Does this kind of music that you play fly in Europe?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you know what? The one tour that I didn't do with Soul Live was the European tour. I haven't had a chance to go to Europe yet.
Okay.
But I know, excuse me, I know that it's definitely very popular.
Yeah.
So, more so than here, I think. In Japan, again. So.
That's been like that for years because,
Yeah.
even the guys that were playing in the 40s and 50s, they used to say that, now they say when they're older, they say, boy, Japan, like,
or France.
treated like real artists or something.
That's what I was trying to say, yeah. They open the doors for you. They're like, here we come. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, it's something I had never experienced as a musician.
Wow.
Like being, you're like royalty over there. It's just a higher level of thing.
It's interesting, when things come from somewhere else, we seem to value them more.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, so much if they were right here in front of you.
Well, you want to close with a little bit of music?
Sure. How about what narrator?
Oh, and by the way,
Mm-hmm.
when I was poking through the things on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
did you sampled Cannonball
Mm.
and his was it his
Oh, yeah.
little Mercy Mercy thing?
Oh,
Sometimes we're not prepared for adversity.
Yes. He is like, you know, sometimes we're not prepared for adversity. And then I made that song was a track I made on my keyboard synthesizer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a kick out of it.
Yeah. I had to stick him in somewhere. You got your horn?
I don't have my horn. All right.
One of the first songs you taught me.
That's
That
right.
and Saxophonist.
Yeah.
Unit 7.
Thank you, Sam.
No problem.